So I got this new Zoom recorder. So it takes AA batteries and I don't want to waste them and I don't have rechargeables here. So I think one solution is, using this. It's a DC input plug. They're actually called barrel connectors. So if you look, this one fits in exactly. And the way it works is that there's two dimensions to any of these things. This is a 1.7 millimeter internal diameter and 4 millimeter external. 2.1 is the more common size. This takes, it says, right here, DC 5 volt 1 amp. And 5 volt is exactly USB powered. For me, it's not as big deal. I have a different variety of AC adapters, but this means you could connect it to any sort of USB power. You gotta make sure it puts out 5 volts and 1 amps, but USB by default puts out 5 volts. The 1 amp may be an issue. Some USB like 2.0 may only put out 500 milliamps, which is 0.5 amps. So let's look at this. This is one of those that plugs into the wall. 3 USB charger, 3.1 amps. So each of these should put out enough amperage. So what we'll do here is take this output. So this is a 220 volts, so we're not going to use it here in America because we use 120. And we'll take this, we'll cut it off, and we'll connect it to a USB cord right here. So let's get started. So this is a tool that's used for wiring. So let's cut this piece off. I mean, you could cut it here where it has the bendiness, but it doesn't matter too much. Just want to cut it. And then you'll have to figure out sort of which wire is which. This tool has an automatic stripping feature. It's very useful for wires like this. The problem is this has 2 wires, so we have to expose them. And I'm just going to take a pair of scissors here and expose the wires individually by shaving off the edges. Sort of making a mess here, but just, I want to just separate these 2 wires. So you can see here there's a white wire and a black wire. So I'll separate it. Makes it easier for us to use. And here is the white wire exposed, and here is the black wire exposed. So I'm going to cut this off. I'll tape it later. I have some tape here, so it looks better. Okay. So you're going to expose these 2. And now I can use my wire stripper to expose these ends because I just have the individual wire. So this is it's called self-adjusting. Makes life a lot easier, but if you have the other one, you just have to, push a little bit harder and get it out. So now I have these ends exposed. I'll clean up a little bit. Okay, and I have to do the same with this end. So this is the end that I don't need. I guess in the future, if I ever need this, I'll keep some distance on it, some length. Cut this off and do the same thing here. And then I just want to strip the edges here so I could separate the two wires just like we did last time. So this is going to have, it's going to be a little bit more complicated because the USB, has more than two cables because USB is a little bit more. And you could actually see this this silver lining. That's actually metal, so it's actually shielding. So this is called a higher quality USB cable. Yeah, I didn't shock myself. I'm not connected to anything. It's just that it's metal, so it's a little bit sharp. And then you see the standard black and the red. So that's the standard for, power, black and red. And the other ones are for data. Probably going to have to expose a little bit more. Okay, so now I've got a little bit more exposed. And I have to peel off this shielding, which is just like aluminum foil basically. Okay, and just trim off the edges to make it a little bit better. What do you do with the rest? Well, see, I don't care about the other cables, so might as well trim them off as well, right? So I don't get as confused. So I already got the white one, I'll trim the green one off. The key with cutting is, this is like a cheap scissor, right? Nothing fancy, but it cuts okay. And so you want to put the force sort of closer. That's how you get the most impact. Okay, and now let's also strip this. I may need to, expose a little bit more, but let's see if this is enough for the wire stripper. Okay, so we have this set. Let me do a little bit of cleanup. Okay, now that we've cleaned up our sheet again, our workspace, so, there's different ways of figuring out which wire is which. I'm going to make a guess that the black is ground and the white is not, because that's by default. We could also check looking up online, or we could actually check directly which goes to which. So usually the inside tip is positive and outside is negative. And so what you want to check here is resistance. Because if it connects, you should have some value. So for example, right now the multimeter is reading 1. Nothing's connected. If you connect the two together, it'll read some number, 0. And so I will put one probe inside. I don't know if it actually could get inside or it's too thick, and see outside. No connection. No connection. If I probe one probe outside, is there a connection? Nope. Here we go. So you put the probe outside here, and you touch this, there's numbers here. That means the black is connected to the outside. And given that black is usually negative, that makes sense, right? Ground. So now we have to make these go together. So there's a few different ways of wiring stuff together. The best way I would say is probably to solder. You could also just sort of wrap it up together and just use electric tape. But, I think soldering is still probably better here to make a more permanent connection. So I'm not great at this, but you want to splay it and then twist it together. So actually, I think I'm gonna expose this more to make it easier. Okay, and you start seeing the other wires that we had cut off previously. And we'll trim it a little bit more to make it neater. Okay, there we go. So let's go back to here. So black to black and white to red. So there's different ways of doing it, but basically if we're going to solder it, then you just have to make sure it's actually intact when you solder it, and you don't care so much about how strong it is. And then this one. Oh. Okay, because I don't have enough hands, and when I twist one, the other one comes undone. I'm going to cheat here and use this to help. So I'm going to tape one of the connections together. That way I could just work on the other one without worrying about this one getting in the way, because you don't want it to get in the way when you're soldering. Okay, so let's say we'll just tape the red and white one together for now. Okay, and then we work on this, and then so this one and this one, we're gonna have to try to twist it a little bit. Okay. Okay, so not the best, not the worst. So for soldering, sometimes you have something called a third hand, something to help you hold this. So this is not the most stable. So we could try to stabilize it with this sort of, I would say, clamping on one side, right? And then this is relatively stable, but we'll put something heavy here to stabilize that as well. we'll make sure this is separate, right? So these things don't get sort of confused. And then we'll just put a blob of solder there to make it so it fits well. So now I have to turn on my solder. And it's going to heat up. It's going to take a little bit of time to heat up. So with soldering, you have a few different pieces. You have this. This is the solder, that thing that gets sort of icky gooey. And then you have the soldering gun. So the soldering gun, or rod or whatever, to tell whether it gets hot, you could just usually have something wet. Everybody uses sponge because it's easy. So yeah, you put that there, and then so you touch this and you just get it to melt on it. You want to make sure to get it nice and hot first. There, you see smoke coming up? Okay, getting hot enough. So we want it to melt on top of that. Get some nice silver blobby stuff there, right? Some on the bottom as well. Okay. Okay, that looks good. Clean it off a little bit. Leave it there. Still hot and ready. We'll give this a little bit of time to cool down. And then we'll apply the wiring to that. I mean the tape to the other side. Because we're going to have to tape it up anyways. Because you don't want to expose metal. That's just a bad idea. Easily get a short circuit or something. Okay. It should cool down pretty quickly. And see, it's pretty strong. And then it's going to wrap it simply for now because we'll wrap the whole thing later. Okay, and now you want this stuff to be together. Okay. A little bit sticky because I have all that glue from the tape. And now we apply and solder. Okay, so it doesn't look like the best job. I'm not great at soldering, but the idea of solder is you just have a connection that's very intact because solder is conductive and it conducts electricity. Whereas if you tape it, right, you have to make sure the wires stay together because the electrical tape will definitely not conduct electricity. That's the whole point of electrical tape. Okay, so now I cleaned up a little bit. Let's take our electrical tape and tape this side up as well. If you pull on it and it's not going to give, you're pretty sure it's going to stay there, especially given we're going to enhance the strength of the connection with some tape. So I'm going to tape up this side as well. There we go, and then we're going to tape this all up together. So this is, some exposed stuff, so we want to trim it to make it so it's easier to tape. And this is where probably having, a thinner edge of the scissors would be nice. So first we'll wrap some tape up here just to tape this stuff together. Wrap it around and then wrap around the other way. So it looks more like a normal wire. And then I'll wrap the other side and finally join them in the middle. Okay, and you see this is exposed. Okay, all wrapped up now, nice and tight. So let's give it a shot and plug it in. So we'll plug in this USB adapter. And then we'll see whether it plugs into the H4n. Hold on power. Oh, no card. I guess I took the card out. But anyways, you see here? Ta-da! There used to be a low battery sign. The battery's almost dead. And then there's none because it's on AC power. So we managed to make a 5-volt connection from the USB cable and an old AC adapter we had lying around to power the Zoom. And that's how you can make your own connection. It's very easy to switch connectors. You just have to know what to do. You put the wires together, and that's it.